then you're talking, well, where is it coming from, and what can we do to reduce it?
Sure. Now you mentioned Widener had been at Michigan State, because I associated him with Kentucky.
Yeah, I think his graduate work was at Michigan State. I may be wrong about that, or he was there for a while or something.
Yeah,
but he came here from Kentucky. Yeah.
Did he bring people with him? I imagine that the new university open positions, young ambitious people that.
One of the first he hired was Bob Mayer, but I don't think he came from Kentucky. I think he was hired from a position in Iowa or
It's Arizona.
Arizona. Yeah, Arizona.
So
why? I don't think he brought a lot of folks with him from Kentucky.
well, Jack Norman had a Kentucky tie of some sort.
Yeah, but he would have gone through the search and screen process at the department level, concentration level. These people that Ed brought in, starting with Bob Mayer, that was early on when there was this big push for all these deans and assistant deans and so on and so forth.
There was mention of advisory committees that were made up of community members, 4 different groups. You talked about advisors to Ed Widener, and those were sort of academic professionals from around the country, or different than these community advisors.
Yeah, I can't tell you who they all were and how many there were, but I know that there was this advisory group that worked on structuring an unusual, innovative academic plan that had an environmental focus and problem solving and interdisciplinarity. And those folks provided, I don't know if it was to Ed Widener or if it was to Fred Harvey Harrington, but I suspect it was Ed Widener because he was on the scene in 1966. And I talked to him in 1966. As a matter of fact, he had an office down on State Street in Madison. So that may have been going on at that time in 1966. And I'm sure that there were people from the Madison campus and elsewhere around the country, that he assembled to do this, to lay out some guidelines for how the direction that this campus should take.
Yeah. Now, in that particular era, there was an awful lot of what they now call, or did call then, campus unrest. And I think the biggest, of course, memorable thing is the bomb in Madison at one of the math buildings.
Sterling Hall, yeah.
But this university was conceived in that atmosphere of the students are going to get us. How did that influence you and others and the planners?
I don't think it had a whole lot of influence. They marched on Tillman. Tillman was mayor at that time. The students marched downtown or on the bridge, I guess, maybe it was, I don't know. And it was a protest march against conditions, just as it was in Madison, Sterling Hall and so on and so forth. And we were graduate students down there at that time, and all this was going on, and we were totally, no, not totally, but removed from it, because our lab was down on the lake shore, and all this was going on in Bascom Hall, if you're familiar with the campus up there, and so on, and the sit-ins that took place and all that kind of thing. Ed Widener worked a lot of this out with Mayor Tillman, Don Tillman, at the time, was mayor of Green Bay, and it was just great. The marvelous thing that they did. Tillman allowed them to march and express themselves, and the students behaved themselves. There was nobody threw any cars in the river or anything like this, and so I don't recall a whole lot of that going on the campus out here at that time.
Did you know Don Tillman? Did you meet him?
Probably I did, but and I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, no. But I know that Ed was very, he was very complimentary about Tillman, Mayor Tillman at the time.
Now, you mentioned the seclusion of your limnology group on campus, and I, as a student here, even got the feeling that there were different clusters of people here. The art students, music were all kind of hanging out together, and the science students had their own little
Yeah,
world.
when I just referred to the limnology lab, that was at Madison.
Yeah.
And it was down in the,
Yeah, I understand that.
Where
But I'm
Lake
saying,
Shore is.
didn't that same
And-
thing go on here?
well, to some extent it did, because we had the constraint. Well, we had two kinds of activities going on. We had sampling on the bay. So students I had 3 or 4 students who worked on the boat. And we were taking samples from the mouth of the river all the way up to Washington Island. And I would go halfway up and meet them and pick up samples and bring them back to Madison, and they'd continue on down and so on. They were isolated for sure, and seasick occasionally and everything else. But then the other thing is you get isolated because where you're doing your analysis is one of the small research labs that we had in this building, Life Science building. And but I never regarded that as any kind of a problem or anything. They had interaction together in classes and things like that.